By the waning months of 1942, the maw of the Nazi Empire seemed to grow ever larger and more menacing, set to consume the world whole. From the frigid landscapes of Eastern Europe and Russia to the sandy shores across the Mediterranean and into Africa's deserts, Hitler's relentless march encroached upon nations, engulfing them in his tyrannical kingdom. Yet, one country refused to succumb. With its resilient spirit and unwavering determination, Britain stood as a beacon of hope amidst the encroaching storm. In the face of Hitler's expanding ambitions, the British Isles became a last bastion of resistance in the West, an indomitable fortress ready to defy the iron grip of Nazi domination. For Britain and the Western Allies, disassembling Hitler's sprawling empire would require a maneuver of unprecedented scale. They would have to chart and execute the most ambitious invasion in human history, an intricate amphibious assault so complex it would demand more than a year of rigorous, methodical planning. The bold plan, codenamed Operation Overlord, was wildly ambitious. It envisioned a flotilla of 7,000 Allied ships ferrying 156,000 troops to the shores of Normandy. A staggering 12,000 aircraft would ensure air superiority, while an army of 25,000 paratroopers would secure critical bridges and railroads in France ahead of the main force. However, a sobering reality loomed large. More than 50 German divisions were in France and the Low Countries garrisoning the Nazis' towering Atlantic Wall. With such formidable defenses in place, even the Allies' impressive numbers would falter if Hitler were to uncover the time and location of the invasion. As such, the enormous military assault called for the largest, most intricate and far-reaching deception scheme ever hatched. A colossal spy game spanning across the globe where secret agents, code breakers, commando operations, inflatable tanks, ragdoll paratroopers and actors playing generals would all be brought together to weave a net of deception never before imagined with one crucial aim: to outwit Hitler and decisively shift the tide of World War II. In the span of less than 3 years, from 1939 to 1942, Hitler's iron grip tightened its hold over Europe. The Nazi dominion had been built on audacious gambles and aggressive maneuvers, consistently outsmarting their adversaries and smothering resistance across the continent. Riding high on the intoxicating wave of conquest, Hitler was resolute in transforming the continent into an unbreachable fortress. With much of Europe in his hands, Hitler began bolstering his defenses against any potential incursion from the West. He commissioned the construction of the formidable Atlantic Wall, a defensive barrier running from the reaches of Norway to the Spanish border. The situation between 1943 and 1944, however, painted a starkly different picture. The seemingly invincible Wehrmacht now faced considerable hurdles. The once impervious armor of Hitler's elite panzer formations lay shattered in the east, beaten back to the river Dnieper by Russian forces. Concurrently, the British and Americans had successfully reclaimed North Africa and set foot in Italy to press from the south. German cities, meanwhile, weathered an escalating onslaught from relentless Allied bombers. The pivot of the war had arrived, and the tide was beginning to shift. The window for an Allied invasion west into Europe was opening, which was acknowledged by the Allies and the Germans. As a result, Allied strategists began to devise a painstakingly ambitious operation, culminating in the legendary Normandy landings on D-Day. The German High Command was not blind to this reality. It knew the Allies were preparing for an amphibious invasion that would undoubtedly be shrouded in secrecy. In October 1943, work on the Atlantic Wall was redoubled under the energetic command of Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, who believed he would inflict a second Dunkirk on the British and their American allies if they dared to probe his Atlantic Wall. The consensus on both sides was clear. The invasion's success hinged on the element of surprise, striking at a place and time that would catch the Germans off guard. If the Wehrmacht uncovered the specifics of the impending landing, they would marshal all their resources to decimate the Allied efforts, regardless of their scale. Consequently, the British, revered for their pioneering commando operations and spy activities during World War II, were entrusted with orchestrating a comprehensive deception campaign in order to keep the Germans off balance, uncertain of where the impending invasion would strike. Britain already had a formidable network of intelligence agencies, each specializing in an array of covert operations. The London Controlling Section, a clandestine unit tasked with strategizing military deceptions within the UK, put forth an ambitious proposal: a grand plan to mislead Hitler and his war machine. This plan would be dubbed Operation Bodyguard, a masterstroke of deception comprising several sub-operations scattered across Europe. Among these, one held paramount importance: Operation Fortitude. The myriad of other operations was meticulously designed to conjure the illusion of looming Allied invasions in the Balkans, Sweden, and the Mediterranean. However, their expected impact was relatively minor. The German High Command had already deduced that the most plausible area for an Allied offensive would be a direct thrust across the English Channel into France. As such, Operation Fortitude branched off into two strategic ventures: Fortitude North and Fortitude South. The former aimed to create the illusion of an impending, large-scale Allied assault on Nazi-occupied Norway. The latter, and significantly more critical operation, intended to mislead the Germans into anticipating the main attack at Pas-de-Calais rather than its actual destination, Normandy. Of the two, Fortitude South carried the most weight. It was considered the most likely to succeed in hoodwinking the German defences. The rationale was simple. Pas-de-Calais was the narrowest point in the English Channel, promising a quicker, less risky crossing for the Allies. Moreover, its expansive, unobstructed beaches were the perfect canvas for a large invasion force to establish a strong foothold. To ensure the success of Operation Fortitude, the Allies would have to pull off an intelligence and counterintelligence operation of unparalleled complexity. It was an undertaking that would stretch their espionage capabilities to their absolute limits, demanding every ounce of their skill and daring. When discussing the deception operation with the other Allied leaders in the Tehran Conference on December 28, 1943, Winston Churchill said to Joseph Stalin, quote, "In wartime, truth is so precious that she should always be attended by a bodyguard of lies." From that phrase, the name Operation Bodyguard was born. In a way, the fate of the war hinged on the Allies' ability to make up a convincing, fictitious story, a narrative so complex that it would serve as a bodyguard of the truth. In the case of Operation Fortitude North, the story was designed to convince the Germans that an incursion into Norway was on the horizon. The Allies conjured the British Fourth Army, an illusory force supposedly stationed in Scotland and led by Lieutenant General Andrew Thorne. The Allies wove an intricate illusion of a non-existent army, complete with fake radio traffic, decoy equipment, and leaked plans suggestive of a northern assault. The lengths to which the Allies went to breathe life into this illusion were astounding. They fabricated military installations and deployed dummy aircraft with simulated radio chatter and routine military exchanges between non-existent units. Adding gravitas to this spectacle, the highly esteemed General Sir Bernard Montgomery was seen arriving in Scotland. Montgomery's visible involvement lent a persuasive authenticity to the tale of a northern offensive. Going the extra mile, the Allies even leaked secret plans of this supposed invasion, counting on them reaching German intelligence. On the other hand, the tale of Fortitude South was crafted to trick the Germans into believing that the primary Allied offensive would strike the Pas-de-Calais region of France, a ruse to distract from the actual target, Normandy. The Allies brought to life the 1st United States Army Group, or FUSAG, yet another bogus force, this time under the command of General George Patton. The selection of Patton was purposeful. Known for his aggression, the Germans held the American commander in high regard and were more likely to believe he'd be leading a significant offensive. This fictitious force was stationed in southeastern England, a plausible launch point for an assault on Calais. Again, the Allies employed an array of subterfuge to add realism to FUSAG. They staged false radio transmissions among the ghost units and deployed decoys. The plan's core was not to hide the Normandy landings entirely, quite the opposite. The Allies wanted Germany to think that some sort of attack was brewing there, just not a real one. The most important element was convincing the Germans that Normandy was actually a feint, a ruse designed to divert precious German forces away from Pas-de-Calais. The goal was to leave the German forces distracted and hesitant to commit. Freezing the German forces in place would leave them vulnerable to a decisive Allied punch. Embracing Rommel's firm belief in swiftly quelling a potential Allied invasion into France, the German High Command grasped the critical importance of uncovering the precise location and timing of the impending operation. Consequently, Germany boosted its intelligence efforts, deploying more spies to unravel the intricate tapestry of Allied plans. However, in the clandestine world of espionage, the British had already taken the upper hand. As Germany funneled more secret agents into Britain and covertly conducted funds to expand their networks, they remained oblivious to British counterintelligence operations' sheer reach and efficacy. By the end of 1943, British authorities had identified all German spies operating on British soil. Turning the tables, they recruited these agents to work as double agents under the ingenious British double-cross system. Despite Germany's relentless efforts to infiltrate Britain with their agents, the operatives hardly established a foothold once on the island. One such agent was Wolf Dietrich Christian Schmidt, who had parachuted into England in September 1940. His freedom was short-lived as he was captured within 24 hours and handed over to a specialized MI5 section governed by the Double Cross Committee. Christened with the codename Tate, Schmidt spent the next 4 years hidden in a series of safe houses where he tirelessly radioed a concoction of misleading information back to his German handlers. Tate was soon joined by other double agents, all working diligently to manage their fictitious spy networks and further cement the German illusion. The German agents faced a stark choice that served as a potent incentive to switch allegiances, either collaborate with the Allies or face immediate execution. The very agents the Germans relied on for intelligence about the impending Allied invasion were working for the Allies, feeding them a cascade of fabricated stories. Another prominent example of this strategic deception was Juan Pujol Garcia, or Garbo, as the British knew him. A Spanish citizen who willingly offered to serve as a double agent, Garbo was instrumental in the Fortitude deception. His fictional network of 27 agents scattered across Britain bolstered the illusion of additional forces being in place. His credibility was so established that Hitler awarded him the Iron Cross for his exemplary service. Garbo and other double agents maintained the secrecy of Operation Overlord, spun a complex web of untruths, and even managed to extract increasing sums of money from the Germans for their services. But tricking the Germans was a delicate craft, requiring the utmost care. Feeding the Germans excessive, overly detailed or suspicious intelligence would instantly raise red flags, severing ties with the German intelligence network. The double agents had to walk a fine line, intertwining minor fictitious details with factual information that the Allies were prepared to divulge. They were permitted to report trivialities such as insignias on soldiers' uniforms and vehicle unit markings, allowing the Germans to piece together a seemingly accurate picture. As such, the Allies weaved into their fictitious story pieces of accurate information, a technique known as baiting. This involved releasing accurate but insignificant data, which, when verified, would increase German confidence in the false information being fed to them. Observations from the preparation zones in Britain conveyed some true information about the real invasion forces. This approach was underpinned by the Fortitude planners' belief that blending as much precise information as possible with fake intelligence would yield more convincing results. The British double agent efforts were so successful and vital to Bodyguard and Fortitude mainly because of the recent decoding of the Enigma machine, Germany's primary tool for encrypting its military communications. British intelligence was able to intercept and read German communications, including those with their spies in Britain. This gave the British an enormous advantage in controlling the flow of information to German intelligence and ensuring their double agents stayed loyal. The dense tangle of narratives spun and fed to the Germans in fragments through radio leaks, double agents, and diplomatic faux pas would not suffice to convince the Wehrmacht that 2 entire Allied armies had materialized seemingly out of nowhere. They needed tangible evidence, something they could see with their own eyes. Thus, the architects of Operation Fortitude embarked on an ambitious project to simulate the assembly of thousands of tanks, warplanes, and landing ships around the port of Dover. For this, they leaned on an old yet dependable trick inflatable tanks and wooden planes to accomplish this feat. Since the advent of tanks in World War I, decoys had misled the enemy into overestimating the opposing forces' firepower. These early replicas were crafted from a wooden framework and covered with painted Hessian cloth resembling various models of British heavy tanks. As the tracks were inoperable, concealed wheels were sometimes attached underneath, allowing the dummy tanks to be horse-drawn from one location to another. However, by the onset of World War II, both tank technology and tank deception methods had advanced significantly. The cumbersome wooden frames were replaced with inflatable tanks or foldable designs that could be quickly deployed. One of the earliest instances of deploying dummy tanks during World War II was in the North African campaign, where they demonstrated their worth in Operation Bertram, where the Allied forces in Egypt, led by Bernard Montgomery, deceived Erwin Rommel about the timing and location of the Allied attack. Guided by Dudley Clark, the mastermind behind military deception, the Royal Engineers in North Africa assembled 2 foldable, portable dummy tanks daily. Between April and June of 1941, they constructed 3 faux Royal Tank regiments, adding another later in November. These deceiving contraptions were placed on jeeps equipped with steel frames draped in canvas, forming self-propelled counterfeit tanks. Furthermore, devices were used to fabricate fake tank tracks while obliterating the real ones. The illusion of a massive Allied build-up was effectively conveyed through hundreds of these dummy tanks lined up in British military bases across Pas-de-Calais, complemented by wooden warplanes. Temporary buildings were erected, and faux landing craft known as Big Bobs were stationed at potential embarkation points in eastern and southeastern England. Notably, General Patton, the Fusag commander, ensured the locations were well publicised to pique German interest. Meanwhile, the visibility of the genuine bases near Normandy was systematically diminished. Military buildings were cleverly disguised as cafes and shops, and vehicles were carefully concealed. As this elaborate charade unfolded, another sub-operation of Bodyguard, known as Operation Pluto, an acronym for pipelines under the ocean, was underway. This involved the construction of underwater oil pipelines across the English Channel to support Operation Overlord. It was anticipated that petrol, oil and lubricants would account for over 60% of the Expeditionary Force's supplies, highlighting the importance of these pipelines. Simultaneously, an audacious sub-operation, codenamed Copperhead, was planned by A-Force. This operation, occurring shortly before D-Day, sought to deceive German intelligence regarding the location of Bernard Montgomery. The plan was built around the theory that Montgomery's absence from England would signal to the Germans that an invasion was not imminent. Thus, actor M.E. Clifton James, who bore an uncanny resemblance to Montgomery, was deployed to publicly appear in Gibraltar and North Africa. By June 6, 1944, Operation Fortitude had achieved its objective. A decrypted transmission of Hiroshi Oshima, the Japanese ambassador, to his government, detailing a conversation with Hitler that confirmed the success of Fortitude. In it, Hitler stated his belief that the Allies would stage diversionary actions against Norway, Denmark, southern France and the French Mediterranean coast before launching a major attack across the Strait of Dover. Notably, Normandy was not a high-priority target in the eyes of the Wehrmacht. This was the ultimate testament to the Allies' comprehensive and intricate web of deceit. On the fateful morning of June 6, 1944, the long-anticipated D-Day arrived. Thousands of Allied troops stormed the beaches of Normandy, braving unrelenting gunfire, high seas and heavy losses. The overcast sky echoed with the roar of bombers, the faltering of machine guns, and the thunderous boom of naval artillery. Soldiers, consumed by fear and fueled by courage, plunged into chaos, fighting through waterlogged uniforms and the haunting sight of fallen comrades. But despite the nightmarish horrors the Allied soldiers had to face, they ultimately prevailed. Operation Fortitude had played a crucial role in the success of the Normandy landings. Through a masterful deception campaign, it had ensured that Germany did not anticipate the primary Allied invasion to occur in Normandy. However, the operation's mission was far from over. Its next objective was to buy the newly established beachhead as much time as possible and prevent the Germans from launching a massive, concentrated counterattack. The fate of the Allied forces hung in the balance, and the continuation of Operation Fortitude became paramount in sustaining their hard-won foothold. Elements of the Bodyguard and Fortitude plans were still in motion on and after June 6th. Elaborate naval deceptions, such as Operations Glimmer Taxable and Big Drum, were undertaken in the English Channel. Small ships and aircraft simulated invasion fleets lying off Pas-de-Calais, Cap d'Antifer, and the western flank. At the same time, Operation Titanic established that the Royal Air Force would drop hundreds of dummy paratroopers, noisemakers, and Special Forces troops in locations away from the actual Normandy drop zones in a bid to deceive the German defenders into believing that a large party had landed, drawing troops away from the beachheads and other strategic sites. Titanic was undertaken by 4 squadrons from No. 3 Group RAF alongside detachments from the 2nd SAS Regiment. The goals of Titanic were broadly achieved. Intercepts of German communications indicate that many of the landings were believed to be legitimate, and they sowed confusion during the early part of the Normandy invasion. Juan Pujol Garcia, the Spanish double agent working for British intelligence in high standing with the Germans, transmitted intelligence about the Allied invasion plan with an urgent warning that the Normandy invasion was not a diversion. This information was sent at the behest of the British High Command to increase his credibility with the Germans. It was done at a time when it was too late to fortify Normandy. This cemented his standing and allowed him to continue to deceive the Germans. Even after the successful landings in Normandy, the Allies continued to employ minor tactical deceptions to keep the Germans guessing. This involved decoys and staged activities around the Normandy beaches under Operation Paradise. On July 20th, Ops B took control of Fortitude South, intending to perpetuate the deception. They initiated a narrative suggesting that Eisenhower had chosen to tackle the Germans using the established Normandy beachhead, with elements of the fictitious Fusag allegedly dispatched to strengthen the Normandy forces. A smaller Second American Army Group, or SUSAG, was fabricated to continue threatening the Pas-de-Calais region. This new plan, however, attracted criticism from Colonel David Strangeways, who had previously revamped the original Fortitude plan. He opposed the creation of numerous fictional US formations amidst an available manpower shortage and feared that reducing the threat to Pas-de-Calais could encourage the Germans to move their 15th Army to reinforce Normandy. Therefore, in late June, Strangeways revised the operation again to retain the focus on Calais. According to his version, the Normandy beachhead struggled, leading Eisenhower to pull resources from Fusag for reinforcement. Fusag would then be replenished with new US formations to land in Pas-de-Calais around the end of July. This masterful deception allowed the Allies to sustain the illusion of Fusag and other forces threatening Pas-de-Calais well after D-Day, likely until around September 1944. This strategy was crucial for the success of the Allied plan, forcing the Germans to retain the bulk of their reserves in anticipation of an attack on Calais that would never materialize. The constant deceptions bewildered German commanders, preventing them from launching a decisive counterattack on the Normandy beachheads due to the lingering fear of another invasion, and enabling the Allies to consolidate and expand their foothold in the area. Finally, on September 28th, having fulfilled its objectives, it was agreed to conclude Operation Fortitude. Any remaining operational deceptions were transferred under the overarching command of Ops B, marking the end of one of the most extensive and effective deception campaigns in history. In the arena of espionage, Operations Bodyguard and Fortitude illuminated the vital importance of information manipulation and strategic management. These audacious endeavors offered a compelling demonstration of how counterintelligence and disinformation could be utilized with devastating effect in a wartime scenario, laying the groundwork for the complex covert operations of the future. Moreover, they underscored the indispensable role of intelligence services in shaping wartime strategy, contributing significantly to the evolution and modus operandi of contemporary intelligence institutions like the CIA and MI6. The startled reaction from the German forces bore a silent yet eloquent testimony to the efficacy of these operations. Despite possessing one of the most formidable and sophisticated military machines of the era, the Germans were utterly confounded by the Allies' cunning strategies. Their prolonged anticipation of an attack on Pas-de-Calais, even in the wake of the Normandy landings, is a vivid testament to the profound impact of the Allies' deception on their strategic calculus. Winston Churchill, a robust proponent of unconventional warfare, which included covert operations, the employment of commando forces, and widespread espionage, found his strategic beliefs vindicated by the triumphant outcome of Operation Bodyguard. Despite enduring criticism for his fervent endorsement of these unconventional tactics, the successful realization of these operations affirmed his conviction in the utility of deception and misinformation as potent instruments of warfare. In essence, the profound ramifications of both Operation Bodyguard and Operation Fortitude extend vastly beyond their initial triumphs during the Second World War, where they cunningly deceived Hitler and precipitated the downfall of his formidable empire. These operations did much more than merely shift the war's course, hastening the Allied victory. They transformed the very ethos of warfare and espionage in ways that had been previously unimaginable. Their influence permeated the subsequent global landscape, forever rewriting engagement and intelligence rules.